So we are trying out something new here.
We have gotten a lot of requests to see our beautiful faces.
Yeah. You
So
know,
we're here.
really give you the whole full sensory. You know, we can't do touch yet, but we can do visual and audio.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are doing our first video episode, and we are in the beautiful Noom space.
Yes.
Which is a friend of Ellen's.
My friend Minori and her husband Nelson, they have basically a sound bed that helps realign your chakras and your creativity. So if you're interested, I'll post the website on our resource page for you.
LA based.
LA based. They're in Chinatown. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful studio.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. Give them a little shout out.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're doing our episode today on cultivating connection. That's going to be the topic.
We decided to bring a hot topic for the videos.
Yeah, bring a hot topic for the videos. There will be one a season for right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see how you guys like it, you know?
Please give us feedback.
Yeah, give us feedback, please.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah, let us know what you think. If you want
Yeah.
more, any suggestions on topics, always open to those.
Yeah, or if you're like, TMI, I liked it when I just could imagine what you look like.
You don't look anything like I expected. I don't look like this anymore.
Don't like this.
I would be hurt though. Like, you follow us on Instagram, right? You know.
Right.
You know what you're getting, right?
You know what you're getting. I know, now our notes can't be hidden, right? All of our prep work, okay? Yeah, so this is Imani.
And Ellen.
We're the woke Mystix.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah, I'm really excited to get into this.
Me too. It's a good topic.
Yeah, obviously I come in, I like to get comfy, I'm barefoot, you know, so you guys just like get your tea and, you know, sit back and enjoy with us. Get
Yeah.
comfy too. Yeah, cultivating connection. Now this isn't something that is it's not like a topic you're gonna go out and be able to find a lot of research on. It's kind of more what we have put together, right? Based on our own personal experiences of what is important to look for. I mean, I guess if you like look up Brené Brown or something,
Right.
she probably has some stuff
Right, definitely.
on it from that kind of, just thinking of that kind of point of view, but like the psychology standpoint. But yeah.
We're talking basically about like not just romantic relationships, we're talking about platonic relationships as well, acquaintances. Like there's a spectrum
Yeah,
of
there's a
how
spectrum.
you can cultivate connection.
Yeah.
And just how it's really about like putting in the effort, the time, the authenticity and empathy into those relationships.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, devoting energy. Like you make a choice to
Yeah.
cultivate these connections. So,
Yeah, to decide that it's important.
Right.
It becomes very thoughtful and intentional.
Right.
Yeah, we kind of have this working definition of what cultivating connection looks like, and it's authenticity, intention,
Mhm.
empathy, bringing your time to something.
Yes. Yeah. And that's hard as adults. We
Yeah.
got a lot of priorities on that
Yeah,
on that to-do
especially
list.
especially when you live in a big city where like we kind of have this hustle mentality of like everybody's here to accomplish something,
Right.
right? And so like that's the priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like slow living idea is a little less prominent of
Mhm.
like, yeah, we're just sitting back and relaxing
Right.
just to enjoy life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So it has its drawbacks and its pros, but
Mhm.
yeah, some of my points on what is important to me with cultivating connection. Let me just take a look at my notes though for a second. We'll just check in here.
One day we'll have them all memorized and all the good stuff. But
Yeah,
you
or
know.
we'll have one of those screens, you know?
Oh yeah, like one of those like projector things.
Yeah, that's behind us, so we
Mhm.
can just read from that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So when cultivating connection, first of all, to even be able to have a connection with somebody is very special because that doesn't happen all the time, right?
No.
You can't just be like, so it's Tuesday, it's connection day, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna meet somebody that I have a really divine connection with.
But no.
It doesn't happen. You can, like those like tight bond ones, like you could have, you know, just one handful
Mhm.
of those in a lifetime. So cultivating connection starts with that really special moment of, oh, you were divinely brought into my life.
Right.
for a reason.
It's very
And
unexpected usually.
Yeah. So I like to say for me that the first knowing that somebody is like a connection is that intuitive feeling that you get. So yeah, you get that feeling of like, oh wow, you came here for a reason. Like you're showing up, I'm seeing uncanny, like magical things that are bringing you into my space. And that kind of lets you know that there's like something special. So that will be my first indicator.
Right.
And then for me, usually after that, it's like, okay, why are you here? Like what purpose are you serving?
Right.
Let me try to figure that out. And usually like in some regard, what I get from that is pretty accurate for how it's going to unfold. So that'll be my first thing. And then, kind of in that, sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone to make the connection.
Oh yeah.
You know, sometimes like if it's a person that you don't know and you're feeling something, you kind of have to be able to step outside of your boundary line to go, hey,
yeah.
You know, I think that we're supposed to connect, and then
because sometimes you connect with people that you wouldn't expect to connect to.
Yeah.
Like you get a reaction, like this gut reaction, and you're like, what is this? Like, this is odd. You're new. You're different from what I normally like attract or draw in. You know.
Yeah, not always what you expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, once you're actually spending time together, really listening to spirit and like trying to tap into what's coming up. Because the one thing that I find difficult is with intuitively feeling what it's supposed to be, not trying to make it go in that direction.
Right.
Right. Allowing it to unfold as it's still supposed to, and being present for that, because you're dealing with another human being. And so, even if the general idea of what you have of the intuition is accurate, you don't know how it gets there.
Right.
How it unfolds into that or molds into that. So really being open to that element of it. And then the other thing is really with connections, all that's happening is people are falling in and out of alignment. You know, like you're creating a dynamic with somebody, and that dynamic is usually can be determined pretty early on, how a relationship is going to go and where energy comes from. But alignment is a thing of like, and that can even happen without a friendship or any type of cultivated connection falling out of grace. Like it could just be like within the relationship, in and out of alignment happens. And so a lot of times, you know, if I'm like talking to a friend and they're like, oh, this person like this, and you know, they're not talking to them anymore, and it's like, well, at the end of the day, you guys just weren't in alignment. Or if I have a conversation and we're not agreeing, it's like, well, then maybe we're just not in alignment, and later we are, you know, so that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And then empathy and compassion is huge for me within those, because as things fall in and out of alignment with people, you know, conflict, or not necessarily conflict, but just like you're not a twin to every one of your cultivated connections.
That's not the purpose. That's not the
purpose. So you're going to have differing opinions, and that's going to happen. People's experiences are going to show up. And so even with your closest bonds, like there's still things that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
And so you have to have that space for empathy and compassion of like, hey, we can be close and still not agree on everything, you know?
Definitely.
And so you really have to bring in compassion for that element to be able to exist. And so with communication, there's some tips and tools that I've picked up from different friendships of mine, or just relationships in general that have been really useful. Like we've kind of mentioned before, saying thanks for sharing. Like if you're in a moment of like having a discussion where you're not going to agree on everything, be like, okay, let me listen to what you have to say. Let me acknowledge it by saying thanks for sharing, so that I can, acknowledge what you had to say there. And then also when somebody is sharing, asking like, are you looking for support or do you want advice? Or like giving support, and then before interjecting with anything, like, do you want my advice on this?
Yeah.
And then that gives the person the moment to think like, oh, do I
or
not?
Do I just need like a space?
Do I just need a space? And like, you know, I have a friend that do that, and it's like, do you need support? And I'm like, yeah. And I talk, and then she's like, okay, do you have any more? She's like, I feel like there's a little bit more in there to say. And I was like, okay, let me see.
Yeah.
And then like get it all out. And then once I'm like, okay, it's all out,
Yeah.
then she interjects. And so that communication style is really constructive for holding space. So that is a key element. And then really being honest, even if something feels like embarrassing or shameful, just like really being able to, in a graceful way, be as honest as possible,
right.
so that you're, yes, the word authentic, but just like transparent, like everything it feels, then you can like really move and feel free and comfortable, right? Because you've just been fully honest. And then all of that for me like really makes it easier to withstand any storm, then it's like, then you can go out in the world and just feel so confident about your connections. So yeah, that's what I think that's my big things. And then my last thing is that no matter what the connection is, like if it falls under friendship or lover or business or family member or soul family, at the end of the day, they're all a connection that needs tended to and cared for. So they're all really important. I don't see a friend or a lover having any more or less importance. They all start with the same base, of like honest connection and empathy, and then from there you decide what other layers you're adding into that dynamic. Yeah, cool.
That was good.
Those are my points.
Those are the major ones to start us off, and of course we'll get into narratives and stories later on. For me, my notes are very similar to yours. Like a lot of your deepest connections can sometimes be very brief or instantaneous and like short-lived. Time doesn't determine the length of a deep connection.
No.
Like I think some people think that, you have this like long-term friendship or you're in this relationship for a very long time. I'm like, you can meet somebody tomorrow who you like instantly connect with and you've only known them for like an hour, but like they're that person that you're like at the snack table with, like at the party, just eating, like cheesing. Cheesing and talking the whole time.
Somebody comes up, oh, you guys must be really good
right,
friends.
You're like, we just met. That's like one thing. Yeah, that's one thing that you need to be open to. It's just that, sometimes like it can be instantaneous, and sometimes it's only for an evening, but that connection like cultivated something within you that like is life changing in some way.
Yeah, left an impression.
Yeah. Also, it's really important to remember that every relationship is a mirror. So when you're in a friendship or a partnership of any kind, usually like things that you admire in people are things that you already have within yourself. And it's just not externalized within you yet, but this person can teach you how to draw upon that also. And then also the things that are triggering you about the other person too live within you as well, and are maybe things that may need to be healed. So always remembering that like your connections and your relationships are mirrors for you, and reflections on the relationship you have with yourself all the time.
And that can also be why something goes in and out of alignment.
Exactly.
Like if something mirrors you and then it doesn't work for you anymore, and then all of a sudden you're like, why isn't this relationship working?
Right. Why does this feel like isn't, these two parts aren't working, fitting? What's happening here?
Yeah. Because those mirrors and that like has all shifted.
Exactly. Being intentional with people in your life, and who you allow within your space. Like you said, always questioning why that person is there, why they've come into your life. And if it feels forced or uncomfortable, like I said, then it's probably out of alignment. And it's energy, right? Like energy is always flowing, so it's okay if like sometimes it's in alignment, sometimes it's out, and sometimes it may come back in. And it's kind of like up to you to decide if you want to receive that energy back too as well. Being super patient with the process and seeing how things unfold. Not trying to project your expectations of what a connection is supposed to be onto the other person. Like you may have that first initial intuitive response, but like you said, not trying to control how that unfolds.
100.
Yes, definitely. Just like relax, be like, okay, I know this, and just like I'm gonna be patient. I'm gonna just sit and watch this happen, because the person has to go through their own personal process as well. It's not on your timeline. It's always possible to come back to realignment, but it's a matter of choice to continue that connection or not. maintaining relationships are very conscious because they're active choices and forms of love. If you don't have the energy to maintain a connection, or you feel energetically drained, then maybe it's not an alignment for you at this time. And being okay with that is big. Being okay with releasing control around those connections. Let's see, what else do I have in here? Oh, and when you do have to like release those connections from your life, like if you keep trying to make it work and it's just not happening, being okay with releasing it with grace and gratitude is big. And even if in that moment you can't really see why that purpose like came into your life and why that person like triggered all these things, you'll see it in hindsight. Just give it a little bit of time for sure. Again, as you said, like being a big believer in when you first meet someone, like that first initial like pull can kind of tell you a lot about what their purpose is going to be in your life. Even if you think like when you meet someone like, oh, it's like romantic, but there's underlying like question mark about that, like there may be something else that's stirring up, like it could be a possible business partnership or collaborator or something like that. So taking off the filter around that as well.
Well, it's kind of also part of our society, right? To be like
romantic,
romance, friend, like
right?
These categories, like where does it go?
Right.
And like sometimes because a connection is so strong, it has this innate intimacy. You know that you don't have to have sex to be intimate, right? Like that's another episode, but. Intimacy can be in a platonic friendship, right? It's a sense of closeness that comes. And so, you can find that in many different kinds of connections. And that can be, like, have multi-layers as far as where it goes.
Exactly.
It's not always romantic.
Exactly. If you feel that your feelings can't be held in a safe space for you to express, then it's not a healthy relationship. Like, that's a big one. You should always feel comfortable to express your truth and have it be heard in a compassionate manner. And it's okay to disagree. You're not supposed to always see eye to eye with your relationships, like you had said, to offer perspective and help challenge you and like expand your knowledge and your mind to new ways of thinking. Remember, we are all operating from a different individual path, and we have different like upbringings, backgrounds, conditioning. So like you said, expressing a lot of compassion and patience towards that process for people is really important. And a lot of misunderstandings can be cleared once you've had those conversations as well around that. And disagreements are not about someone winning, it's about expressing each side and coming to some type of accord.
Right. And that kind of comes back to compassion, like the need to be right versus the need to be compassionate. Compassionate is just having understanding for different perspectives of people that might not agree with you. Right.
And your need to be right kind of stems from your ego. And we'll talk about that in another episode.
Lots of other episodes being mentioned here. So examples. Story time.
I guess I'm starting. Do you want me to start? Or
Go for it.
All right. For me, I've been very, very blessed. It's a rarity to have friendships that last as long as like my very close group of friends. Like my longest friendship is going on 21 years. So that's very rare in today's society, I think.
And you also, like, you grew up here too, so that kind of helps, like, being close. The people that still live here.
Definitely. A lot of us still live here. And even the people who have like moved away, like we've always been able to maintain a connection when they've come like back and forth. So that's been, I think my inner child was like, you need community in order to survive out here in these streets, girl. So we're gonna find them now, like early on. And I was like an only child too, so I didn't have a lot of kids around me. I wasn't like playing at home. So it was really important for me to have a very solid friendship group. My mom and my dad are always like, we are very lucky that you found the friends that you did and not some of the other ones, because you guys were like such good kids all the time. And each of them I know serve a purpose for me now as an adult. So that's been interesting to see how like it went from, school friendships into like adult friendships where usually that's when people fall apart in their connections, because it's like, oh, you're not in this incubator that's like forcing you to be friends.
And life is going in different paths.
Exactly. So like even though we all are on these different journeys, like each of these friendships have taught me different things. Like one of my friends has wanted to be a TV screenwriter since she was in middle school, and she's never let go of that dream, and she's like the most hardworking person I know. And so that's inspiring to see. Like one of my friends is an entrepreneur and just like fully jumped in, and that was super inspiring for me also. And one of my friends, we are like, she kind of can inspire like the wild child in me. Like she's kind of like a party girl sometimes, but she definitely knows how to like get me to like pull that out of me also, because you know, you need to let your wild self free every once in a while. And I also like that having those long-term connections has really, it's a mirror, and they also know how to like check me. So they know when something's out of alignment for me, or if I'm unhappy and I try to front that I'm not unhappy, they're like, girl, like stop. Like we've known you since you were 7. Like you cannot do that.
We know all your tactics.
We know all your tactics. We know how you operate. Like stop this.
Yeah.
You know? So they understand what I need emotionally in that way, which is really good, really healthy for me. I have a friend who I met overseas when I was 16 in a summer program, and my dad was just like, be friends, you need a friend here, go be friends with her. And we like went to the orientation together, and we became pen pals. She lived in Shanghai at the time, and we continued to write letters. Then she moved to New York, and then she moved to LA. We're still really good friends now, and she still writes me letters, which is like the cutest thing. Like it continued that, like, I don't know, that nostalgia from our childhood of doing that. And she was, I think, what I would consider like my first like spiritual friend. Like she was the one that talked to me about like, you know, magic and witchcraft and stuff. And like, this was before I was even fully into my spirituality like practice, but like just having somebody to kind of like share books on and that, and like media and things was really cool. So yeah, so I would say that that friendship has always been very supportive in that way, and also like super non-judgmental. Like, you know, you have certain friends that like you feel like sometimes
you can't say certain things.
Yeah, they won't resonate with like certain experiences and stuff. And then you have friends who like can hear it all and they won't blink an eye, and they're like, all right, well, that's that, you know. So that's definitely like one of those connections.
And cool that you guys met overseas and now live in the same city.
And now live in the same city. I know we still don't see each other a lot in person, but we like text all the time, and like it's just funny that like that has continued. And I love that I still get letters. I think that's awesome. Being open to new connections in the past has been difficult for me, because I've dealt with like energy, what they call energy vampires, like people who kind of just like suck away your energy, because I didn't have any boundaries. So that was a big thing I had to learn within myself. But once I learned that within myself, I became open to new people and new connections for sure. It's again like trusting the feeling that arises when you first meet someone that tells you everything about what could possibly happen, or like what their purpose is for you. And so I put a lot more like intentional energy into being open to like new energy, especially like this past, I would say, year and a half, probably. And it's always like, it's never planned. Like it's always like, I meet this person in the most random, unexpected way. Like my friend who like I met at like my birthday party, who just like happened to be invited by a friend, and then like we hit it off, and like has inspired me a lot about like business and entrepreneurship, and like came in like a few months right before I went into entrepreneurship. So I was like, oh, I see what this is, and like kind of like a mentor role too in that way.
Was it before you went in? We already had the Woke Mystix when you met him.
But I wasn't.
But you hadn't fully stepped.
No, I was still working like a 9 to 5. I was very miserable at my job. I think every time he saw me, I was more and more miserable. And he's like, "Yo, you gotta get out." And I'm like, "I know." But I think that like surrounding myself more with people who are on the path that I want to be on has been super inspiring for me and very supportive, because then it's like, oh, I can do this. Possible. I feel like if I was surrounded by a bunch of people who were still working 9 to 5s, I would not feel supported in any kind of way about doing that. And then it's interesting because one of my new connections, you referred to me for a birth chart reading. And then she...
Yeah, because I did her reading. And I was like, you sound a lot like my co-host. You should get a reading from her.
And she was really chill. We like talked for like, I think 20 minutes about her reading, and then we got into all these other conversations and sat for like 3 hours. But it's interesting, she's brought back a lot of topics that I was interested in as a kid. So I was like, oh, cool, like it's kind of like the return of my inner child's interest, so it kind of sparked that again. So I think that's where that new connection kind of came from. And what that was supposed to be. And then I have a friend who I worked with at a design company with, and when we worked at the design company, we were not friends. Like we talked in the hallways maybe. We talked at like I think 2 like holiday events for the company, and like that was it. But I always saw like crystals on her desk and like these random things, and I'm like,
I see you.
I see you. And I remember when I first came, like my first tour, I saw her and I was like, I like her. I don't know her, but I like her. And now that she left like fashion and has gone into wellness, now I'm working more in wellness. Like our paths have aligned much more closely together, which makes more sense. That like, of course, we weren't friends in the fashion like realm because like we weren't resonating with it.
We were not resonating.
We weren't in frequency. And now we're in frequency. So it makes
you guys
sense.
have done like moon workshops and
so it's been that's been really cool to see how that's like come about, like circled back around, you know, again, like you said about like vibrations and energy and stuff for sure.
And it's interesting when you meet somebody and then you don't become close for like another year or something, right? Like, we knew each
other for like I think 2 years or something.
You were like, now it's landed.
Exactly. Even when I met you, like I knew we were supposed to work together, and I didn't know. It was like, okay, it's either fashion or spiritual stuff, but I can't figure it out yet. But
three years later.
3 years later, we're here.
You never know how it's gonna get to the point that you know it's gonna get to.
Exactly. And then I made another connection last summer too, who kind of like reinstilled my belief in myself after my breakup. Like just that like it's okay to like step out of like what's called the narrative of like going through a divorce and like a separation, because like they were going through a big breakup as well. So we were like kind of each other's support during that time. So I think that's like the big role that they play also in my life as well. It makes a lot of sense for sure.
Also funny how you met them.
We met at a event that you were doing readings for, and I wasn't supposed to like really go. Like I was just going to support you. Like I wasn't there to like do anything. And like I think I was getting us food, and we met in the food line. And then they asked for a reading from Imani, and then they asked me to be in their reading for Imani, and I was like, that's a lot off the bat.
And they had a cultivated connection, right? So like, I'm sitting there doing the reading, and I'm like, can't be in a room with an intuitive.
Right. I'm like, oh. Imani's like, come here after the reading. Get over here. So, and then like we developed a friendship, and then after that, I realized, I was like, oh, I see, like even when I looked up our birth charts, like our houses are in the same identical places, which means that you undergo these like same life cycles at the same time. So I was like, oh, I get it.
Already in alignment.
I get it.
From that perspective.
And then my last 2 points, one was about setting boundaries within deep connections, like in order to return energy to yourself sometimes. Like I have a really dear friend of mine who has been like battling with a lot of like different issues, and I was becoming very much a caretaker to her.
Which can turn into enabling versus supporting.
Exactly. And then, you know, some of my boundaries were crossed, and I was like, I need to like basically like, put up like a little bit of like separation here and kind of detach. And like that was very painful for me to do because I had been being the caretaker for so long.
This person.
And so, like that's one of those connections where like it's not dead. Like she's still my friend, and I still love her deeply. But there is like a thing, sometimes you have to kind of like know when a connection is draining you more than supporting you. So I do expect that connection will come back around when like she's in a new energy space. For sure. And it's important to hold space for yourself with those emotions also that come up too. And there's kind of like a grief process that happens with like kind of grieving the friendship or the connection as it once was to allow the new to come in.
Because a friendship can go through different lifespans, right?
Exactly.
Even you said your friends from when you were growing up, like you go into adulthood and they become
something different.
You know? So they have to kind of die the way they were, and sometimes it's a really easy natural process because you don't ever lose them. They just kind of like all of a sudden things kind of start shifting in a new way. Or sometimes it's a drastic, like they die and then they rebirth in a different direction.
And then my last thing for me, usually the hardest lesson for me has been when people have like left my life suddenly and unexpectedly without explanation. I've gone through that a few times, and I used to hold a lot of resentment towards the person because of that, because I'd be like, I deserve an explanation, like my energy hasn't changed, your energy has changed, you know, and I used to like get like really angry about it. But I've learned that it's okay to let people go and let them, you know, continue their journey. And now I take it as a sign that, you know, like you're not in alignment at this time, but you're like thankful for the experience always.
Yeah.
And trying to hold on to a connection that has run its course is not having faith that there's something better or more in alignment for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've never, like those two instances when people have like left suddenly in my life, they haven't returned. And so I'm like, oh, okay, like the lesson was learned for the both of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my points.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cultivating connection. When you were talking about some of those experiences that happened where you met people, you know, without anticipating that you guys were going to become close, right? I was thinking about how also from the outside perspective, it's so cool to see when connection happens, right? Like thinking of when you get to play a part in that, like, you know, I did the reading for one of your friends and I was like, wow, you're really similar to my cousin. You should get a reading from her.
Right.
And like to be able to see where you're like, oh, I wonder if it's almost like matchmaking
Right.
friendships, right? You know, like when we're kids, we do
energy
that.
matchmaking.
Yeah.
Oh, that should be an app.
Energy matchmaking. Ooh, yeah, right? Somebody's gonna get on it.
I know. We're gonna take it.
But yeah, one of my friends and I, we talk about that, like how it's really cool to be able to connect people to see where there's resonances sometimes.
Right.
There was these two girls that I did that with. Like one was from this women's space that I was in, and she grew up in South Africa. Another one is from France that I knew from a yoga studio that I was at. But like they had these uncanny similarities of like family members and like things that happened, and like they were both in the same, like they both did literature and poetry, like and they were in the same program at UCLA.
You're like, how do you two not know
each other? And so I introduced them to each other, and they were like, oh my God, you introduced me to my like soulmate friend, you know? So it's really cool to see those things where you're like, oh, I think your frequency really aligns with this other person. And sometimes like you do it and like they meet and it's like cool, but like they didn't, and then sometimes they meet and it's magic, and it's really awesome to be able to watch connections happen with people, especially like within, you know, you bring your circle around, and like that's part of community building, right? Like your circle and then other circles and then and like sometimes people will connect and build, so that's really awesome to watch. And then with cultivating connection, it's interesting to think about, childhood. I've lived here in California for going on 9 years, but because I'm not from here, like I don't have a lot of friendships that were rooted from my upbringing here, and so it was kind of like, it's like starting over, right? But now that I've lived here long enough, like I have had friends that I've known for like 8 years that have, you know, definitely become like family. But because of that, when I first came, you know, you experience this certain level of loneliness, especially in a big city. Big cities can sometimes be the most lonely places.
Yeah, because they're filled with people.
They're just, and just everybody's separated, and then you're coming into groups sometimes where people have already known each other for a long time, so they're just not super open to a new connection because they don't need it. So when you do find people that are open, it's really special.
It's kind of hard too, like to make new friends in big cities also, because sometimes it feels like everyone is like looking for something from you. You know what I mean? And like rather than cultivating this energy, you know?
And like we said earlier, to find that magic connection that happens, you can't control when that's going to happen. Right. You know, so you're kind of waiting and you have no control within that. So because of that, it made me really open to people, because I wanted to stay open to connections. And so that's kind of one of the, like when I go out into the world, I mean, sometimes I go out and I'm like focused. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this thing. But for the most part, like if somebody wants to connect and talk, like I do, because there's just not enough people that are, you know, just even making space for that.
Open
in a moment. You know, it might not be that I have space to cultivate and carry a connection, but even just in a moment to be able to, or like, you know, simple like people that are homeless on the street, like they're still people, right?
Right.
Like, when somebody's like, hey, how you doing? Like,
Say go ahead, yeah.
You know, like just giving moments for that level of connection was a big thing. But how I've operated, I'm a Cancer, so we have a hard time letting people go. And we are emotional. And so when I was younger, like I remember in high school, I would have some difficult falling outs because I would have friendships and things would come up for me and I wouldn't want to share because I didn't want to seem over emotional. So I would hold on to things. And then it would get to this point where I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't take this person anymore. I'm done. And then I would just share, and then the conflict would come up, and then I would retract, and I'd be like, that's it, I'm good, bye, and we're out. And so I think I had like 2 falling outs at the end of high school that happened because of that, where I just like couldn't deal anymore. I didn't have the skill set. You know, it's really a skill set to know how to share, right? And so, and I also I'm not an only child. I have 2 older brothers, but they were like 20 when I was born, so basically was an only child. So I cultivated sisterhood with my friends. So that was always really important to me. And then, one of my friendships that has been the most recent, I've known her for a year, was not, actually, also we had gone to an event that when I met her, and we had gone to an event, and was not like going with the intention of like I'm gonna make a new friend. And
we were
just chilling.
Going to the bar.
And somehow her and I ended up chatting, and we both lived in the same area, and so we exchanged info, and then we hung out. And then it was very clear when we hung out. I was like, oh yeah, this is like a very special connection. And then knowing me, like I go home, I'm gonna download, I'm like, what's coming through? And they basically said that like there was this person I had really cherished in my life for a long time and still do, but we had kind of gone out from each other's lives. And it left a big space, and this was a person that was like a sister to me. And so she was like a sister to me, and so they told me like this is somebody that we've brought into your life that's it's not a replacement, but like kind of fills that similar energy.
Right.
Yeah, and then I clearly saw how it did. Like, even though it had only been a year of knowing each other, like she became home, you know? Yeah. And it's very rare that you find those people that are home centers for you, especially when you're not around family or around home. So this friendship that came in, it was like a sisterhood. She taught me a lot about communication styles because of some of the, what she had been through in her life and where she had ended up, and some of the programming that she had learned became like vital resources for me as well. Communication of like the thanks for sharing, and am I here to show support, or do you need my advice, or are you done sharing? Or if I like bring something up and I'm kind of upset about it, and my favorite line, do you want to do some work around that? And that's a good one. One time that had come up with somebody that from back home, and I was like talking about them, and she was like, do you want to do some work around that? And I was like, I guess so. And she loves to bring that up. She'll be like, that one time we were like, I guess so. All mad.
I guess I have to address this because I'm this upset about it. Yeah.
We can do some work on it. And then she'll like ask some questions, like, how are you feeling? And what about this? So that you can like unearth the root of it.
Right.
You know? That was always one of the funniest stories. But the biggest thing too with that friendship was just that like we were both really open for connection, and coming from this place of like
you both had kind of like, I remember you guys talking about like you both had expressed like wanting a girlfriend in the same area. Like
I hadn't even thought that.
I remember she said that.
She did. She had been manifesting me. She was like telling all of the people in her life, I manifested Imani, and like they all met me, they're like, oh yeah, she finally brought you into her life. I had not been trying to manifest that, but it ended up being one of the most important things to me. Right. So it's really interesting too when you're not actively thinking about doing something, but then when it comes, you're like, I could not have imagined my life without this thing. Which was also kind of interesting too when you talked about doing the podcast, and we've mentioned this before. Yeah. You were like, this podcast, and I was like, I had never thought of this.
Right.
And now, like, I could not imagine
lives without
it. Like, what? Like, no, this is a staple item. It's like one of the most important things to me. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I learned a lot from that friendship that has taught me about how to cultivate other friendships, you know? So I definitely know what I learned there. It was very, very prominent. And then there's also the other connections that aren't necessarily super close, but they have a purpose, right? So even acquaintances or like friends that are kind of on the peripheral can mean that too. They come in for a reason. So I've had a few where I run into a person, and in LA, it's a pretty big city, but it can be small when you spend time in certain areas.
Yeah, it's getting smaller and
But
smaller.
it's
I'm
not-
learning that. Like, you know who? How? Like,
Oh,
what?
okay,
Like,
no.
people from high school?
Right.
What?
Yeah, so when that happens, like, there's like 3 different people I can think of that I've run into multiple times where, and they're spiritually minded enough too, or work in that area to be like, I know we're supposed to know each other.
Yeah.
So that's really a nice relief when they're not just like, this is weird, and I wonder why. They're like, there's no coincidences.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, right. So then that can help kind of propel those in the direction that they're supposed to go. I also had that happen in this really interesting scenario where I went to the farmer's market. Something just told me, like, go there. I saw this booth, and I was like, I'm gonna go there. And I go up to this booth. It's like this African man's booth, and we start talking. And come to find out, I'm here in LA, right? And we're talking about Portland because he used to live there, and I was like, wild, and he's mentioning these people, and they're people that I know. And then I was like, yeah, my dad, he played with Obolati, and he was like, what's your dad's name? And I was like, Steve. He's like, the guitar player. Yeah.
You're like,
This
you know my
man
dad?
in LA knew my dad in like the 90s.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it was wild.
I love that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I was like, universe is out here every day, always delivering magic.
Always.
You know, like magic doesn't necessarily mean like these big flashy things. Like it can be these little everyday moments. So yeah, those kind of, you know, small connections that only come in one day, but
Right.
like
They'll shift
they
everything.
bring a purpose. Yeah. Yeah, everything's here to shift energy. And then of course there's the falling outs, and those are kind of like, you know, those can be the biggest wounds when you have falling outs with people where all of the tips and tricks that you use don't work. You know, all the tips and tricks you use, the thank you for sharing, I'm going to do everything I can, and it still just doesn't work. And I think that's that thing of like, something's not in alignment, you know, and I had a recent example of that with having a falling out with somebody. And, you know, it was interesting because I had a dream, you know, being intuitive, stuff will come through. And I had this dream that was like, there was these 2 people in it. They were like, spirit was basically like, nah, they're not for you. And I disregarded the dream. I was like, nope, because I'm a Cancer and I hold on to everything. And so I was like, no, we're not doing that. And then I came back from my initiation and just like kept seeing, like spirit just kept showing me this stuff. And I just like didn't want to see. And then I would even try to like mend as things were like naturally dissolving. I would try and mend and do this thing, and they wouldn't answer the phone, or the voicemail was full, and I was like, and I'd be like, spirit, why is this happening? I'm trying so hard. And they're like, we are protecting you and keeping you away. And then I just kept pushing, and then I pushed to the point where everything was unearthed. All of the sickness that was lying underneath came up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, cool, well now I saw it. I saw everything that I knew I was getting signs from, and now it's in front of me. And then the hard part is like when there's nothing you can do. Like all of your tips and tricks just don't work. And in those instances, it's like, you know, you have to let the universe do its job.
Yeah, you gotta release it and give grace to it and gratitude for it, and be okay with just laying it to rest.
Yeah, and in those moments, it's also for me, you know, I think of, I've gotten the Wheel of Fortune card, you know, and
what comes up must come
down, and what comes down comes back up, and the universe works on a karmic universal law, and so you have to let the universe do its thing, and a lot of times what it can do can be so much more profound than what you can do on your own.
Right.
And so, you know, the only thing is that those things take time, and you don't know what kind of time schedule they're on.
Yeah.
And so that can be the challenging part of like allowing that to unfold as it's supposed to. And also remembering, kind of similar to what you said about reflections, like there's karmic ties, you know, and, you know, sometimes you might see in a falling out, with somebody that it's a repeat of a past falling out, like it looks identical. Like I've had a falling out with an ex-partner that looked exactly the same as a falling out with a friend, and was like, yo,
that's crazy.
This is too uncanny, the way it happened, some of the language that was used, and I was just like, these are why is this repeating itself? You know, like what's the root of why it's showing up again, and what's the lesson with that showing up again? Which a lot of times for me comes down to the fact of not trying to meddle and letting things be. Like I remember the first time it happened with an ex-partner, like I just tried to do everything under the sun to make things harmonious.
Right.
You know, like I just, conflict is so hard for me. I just wanted things to be harmonious. Like I even tried to bring like a rose quartz. I was like, can I give you rose quartz?
Oh my God.
The answer was no. And so it was one of those things where I just had to let everything unfold the way it was supposed to. And that can be really hard. Like with that ex-partner, you know, things ended. It was rough. And then like a friendship went out of my life that was like from childhood. After that, that was rough. And then they showed up in my life again because I like had this place I frequent. Oh yeah, I've talked about this many times actually. They showed up again. And so of course when somebody shows up and you're spiritual, you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, you're like, there's something bigger.
Why are they here? Like how did they end up next to my best friend in this spot?
Right.
You know, like that I am. And that was so wild for me. I just was like, I could not comprehend that situation. It was really interesting. So yeah, cultivating connection doesn't always look like this pretty 5-step plan, you know, and I think that it's that falling out of grace that is really, those are the moments that are the most raw and beautiful lessons to learn from, because the moments that feel ugly and the most uncomfortable are the ones that turn your diamonds into diamonds or your pearls into pearls. It's acceptance of life, you know, and knowing that the universe like works on a much bigger magnitude than you do as one little being on the planet. And
it's like that like I said, when you're still holding on to something that's not out of alignment, like you're showing the universe that you don't trust it to like bring in something
what it's supposed to do.
to bring in something that is in more alignment, that is going to push you further into a higher consciousness. And it's like faith.
It's faith in that.
Faith,
I know it is. And faith in your direction of where you're going, you know, because that shifts and changes as well. And so trusting that process. And then, you know, some of our ending points that I had put on there. One, the podcast, right? What we have cultivated here within the space that we share, but also how that expands out to everybody else. You know, it's been like one of our hopes that you get this very comfortable living room vibe of being here with your friends, you know, being in this kind of space and like just being comfortable and being able to share and like doing so and like having a constructed environment. As humans, we actually crave that because that lets us know, okay, I know how to be and where I can be in this space. So giving those kind of constructed dialogues can really help to create safe space for sharing. And then of course we have such great chemistry out here, and people just love listening to us.
And they
get to see us.
We out here. We definitely like video has been something that's come. I think like this is like
a few times,
up to like 8 times at least. Like people have been like,
do video?
Do you do video? And I'm like, oh, is this a thing? Like I get it though. Like some people are very visual, you know, in comparison to audio, you know, and so they would like to actually watch it unfold.
Yeah, it brings more life to it. Yeah, you know, you get to really understand how a person is when you fully get to see them, right? Like how do they show up in space? And how does that complement you and what resonates with you and what it brings out in
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, so hopefully this has just deepened our connection.
Yes. Yes, that's the ploy here. That's the hope.
Yeah.
Is that it brings more connection to our space that we hold for you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then, you know, my last thoughts are just like, yeah, be gentle with yourself. Allow for mistakes, you know, because we're not going to be, we're not going to be perfect. And so it's really allowing for that compassion. And allow the cultivated connections to show up as they're supposed to. And know that, like, they need to live their life, you know, how they need to evolve. And, like, that is going to happen in alignment that goes in and out.
Yeah. I think, like, society kind of tries to train us to be very, like, end goal oriented.
Yes.
Like, very, like, so when you meet somebody, you're like, where's this going? It's going to go end up here. This is how it's going to end up. So you immediately begin to, like, formulate a plan in your head. But there's really beauty in just, like, taking a step back and just breathing, like, energy and intention into the connection and just seeing how that unfolds and, like, the magic that is created during that time. Yeah, that's what you're really looking for at the end of the day. So
yeah, the magic of the present moment.
Exactly.
Of what comes into your present moment and what is there to be seen is really special. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it, folks.
First video.
Yeah.
We did it.
So
usual you can find us on our website.
Oh yeah.
Mystix.com if you want to book us for a quantum reading or astrology or birth chart.
Yeah.
Instagram handle, same name, Mystix.
Yeah, we post daily on there.
Yeah, we on it.
Yeah, we are on it. Okay.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you.
Until next time.
Bye.